So today I've shared two sets of pictures. The first three are meant to show you how to illustrate flowers in more with more detailing. So this is a very slow process to fill up color layer upon layer. So I want to show that just a little bit because in the past we the three classes that we've done were all we've done intense sketching, but we haven't done the same in painting. The other two were more loose illustration. So um, I know this can get a little um, uh, I wouldn't want to put negative words to it, but a little challenging, simply because this technique involves uh, becoming comfortable with different types of or different consistencies of paint, also understanding how different shades of color work with each other when you layer them, and being able to have a nice control over your brush. So when you're making the stroke, you know what kind of line or shape you're going to make. Now, this is like the ultimate goal that we must all have. So I want to show this to you so you know that there is more than just making loose flowers. You can make very realistic looking flowers also in watercolor. Although I would say that very few people end up doing that in watercolor, since the whole idea of watercolor is the blends and the color running into each other. But I have found that if you mix the two, you have a little bit of the casual feel of watercolor along with a few specific spaces that you pay attention to and do a lot more detail, uh, makes for a very interesting artwork. This is something that you can actually put up even as a formal painting in your homes. So today I just want to go over the different techniques and expose you to that end. But before we do that, the second lot of three images that I've sent to you, these are more for graphic representation, how we can make graphic flowers. So this is the other end of the spectrum of making illustrations. Instead of making something hyper realistic, we take a cue from photographs and make them very graphic, very blatantly graphic. So you're really not even trying to make it look like a very fine flower or anything. So I want to show you both. We're going to tackle the second part first so that we get our hand warmed up to make the sketches, and then we will tackle a little bit of the first part with the first set of flowers. All of these three flowers have all got very distinct petals. You can easily tell the petal shape, proportions are easy to make. So we are going to make graphic floral representations of these flowers. And then come the more complicated petal patterns. This is a tulip, this is an iris, and this is probably, I know the name of this flower, it's very beautiful. It has very long stemmed flowers and it opens up as an inflorescence. But this is also another thing that you can consider. When illustrating flowers, we don't always have to go towards a full bloom. There are so many different things around flowers that can also be very attractive subjects. Here we have a half open bud. Then you can also look at seeds, dried flowers, or even drying flowers, partly fresh, partly drying, some drooped flowers. So look at all the entire life cycle of flowers. You might find something interesting to sketch. So I look for a picture which has adequate contrast interesting colors and color combinations. In this case, because we are doing a lot of color blends, these multiple colors will make for a very interesting topic. Here, the color blends exist, but within a small range of colors. We don't have a diametrically opposite range in colors, as you might see over here, and even more over here. So we'll get to this in about an half an hour, 40 minutes time. But first, I wanted to show you these. These are easily replicated as graphics. We can draw them either in pencil or directly in pen. And all this entails is, as we normally do, just work out a shape. In this case, we have like an oval shape here, an oval shape on the top, and then almost like you would fill segments of pineapple, we are going to create these petals. So everything is simplified. You don't look at too many details over here. So in this case, even if I make the leaf like this, and then an ad hoc leaf on the right like this, in order to suit my composition, it is perfectly valid. So there's a lot of freedom of drawing and interpretation in an image like this. So let's try making the protea first. I'm going to encourage you to make just the base with pencil so that you have your proportions in place, and then we will draw in pen. So on the page, we are going to make these graphic flowers just about this small. If you want, you can use two separate sheets for this. And then the tulip we will make in one section. So we need at least half a page for the tulip, because you might want to make notes about the colors, the brush, consistency, testing, all that. So let's try making the protea somewhere here. We have an ovalish shape, an oval like this, maybe. I'll make it slightly deeper so you can see the lines just about. This is the shape of the whole flower. And then draw the stem down. Make these lines fairly simple. And a certain distance below the flower, we have the first leaf. And then we have lines that go to the sides where the other leaves will be drawn. In places where you see overlaps, you should make pencil lines so that you can see where the rest of the or how that pattern will continue behind the overlapped section. So I have drawn part of this leaf over here on the right and part of the leaf over here on the left, which is covering a small section of the flower. But I'm drawing the petals on the flower in those sections beforehand, so that when I expand this design, it does not look odd. Continuity is very important. Now, at whatever point you feel you are comfortable, you can stop drawing. Of course, you can go back and draw again in pencil the sections that you come to. In order to make a graphic image, first let's start with drawing what we see in the foreground. So I see this petal in the foreground. It's a little shorter than I have made, so I'm changing this and making this shape. Then I will make the shape of the leaf coming out towards the right. And similarly on the left. Even though our drawings are going to be graphic, you can take a cue from the photograph about how to draw the lines, where to draw which line from. Now, once these are drawn, I will make the base of the flower, and instead of just drawing a straight line, I'm going to draw a few leaves starting from the stalk itself. This instantly gives the stalk a very interesting character. And then instead of making the outline like this, I'm going to build that outline petal by petal, wherever it is valid, like this. So here is pretty much a study of the structure. Now, in some cases, as the petals start moving to the side, the left side of the petal might look long and angular, and the right side might look straighter. That's simply because of foreshortening. So try and pay attention to these things that happen. This will be straighter, this will be a little more angular. This will also sometimes be rounder. And then you have a whole host of petals coming right up to the center. And in this, there is a certain rounding. You see that they fold slightly towards the right. In terms of art, a graphic image is like, I think, truly represented by an emoji. You you are only meant to see the the emotion behind the emoji. It doesn't have to be a representative. It's representative of a face. It does not have to be one specific face. Now, when you come to the back, here there's something interesting happening. You will draw the petals rounded, and then you will draw a very flat V shape. And this V shape will keep changing its position. So sometimes the V shape is pointing that way. like this. This is a V as well. So over here now, my V is pointing towards the right. I can make another shape like this, a V shape pointing slightly over here. Now, this is not an exact V. One side will be longer, the other side will be shorter. The tip of the V can be on one side or another. Here, the tip starts moving towards the left. And by the time we come to the center, the tip comes right at the bottom. Now, I'm not making any more. I can make one more leaf, I think, to balance this out. And then I'm going to make these knobby structures to give my stem some character. And I prefer to never leave this unaddressed. So I will give it a cut and make this look like it is standing on its own. Once your illustration is done, wait for about 5 minutes. Then you can either erase lines, or if you want, you can make more supplementary shapes like these. And if you're unsure about them, then first make them in pencil, see what you feel about them, and then make them in pen. Okay, how's it going? Now, once you're able to make a black and white line drawing of flowers, you have limitless options about how you want to expand this. These designs work very well for single color printing. For example, if I need to make a bag, or if I want to print this on a letterhead, I can easily have this translated into just one color and printed in maybe a gray or a pink or something. Works very beautifully. If you want to, you can expand this further. Make make something like a frame around it. I often like to make frames which are not necessarily complete. Something like this. And then you can fill up just a color in the background, or you can also fill the whole space up with um, textures. Those look very nice. You can fill these flowers ahead with texture also. So I have used a point 2 for the drawing, but I could use a point 5 or something and then fill this up with texture. We'll make texture in the next flowers. So these flowers are also fairly easy to make. They have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 petals. Easy to divide. 1, 2, 3, 4 in north, south, east, west direction, and then the other two in the other two directions. You can proportion the petals a certain way, and all of them are serrated towards the outside edge. So to make that clump of flowers, again, you can use your pencil, make a circle, and instead of drawing 12 and 4, I'm going to just turn the petals around by 45, maybe not even 45, 10 degrees. The trick is to get the proportion of the center of the flower and the petals right. So you can measure the petal size in terms of the center of the flower. And now here's the trick. Instead of making a circle in the center, you could make the center of the flower more interesting by converting it into dots or ovals. You don't really need that circle. So this option fills up that part of the flower with a much more interesting texture. Once this is done, then on either side of each of these lines, we will draw a shape like this. So in some flowers, you'll notice that the bulbous part is towards the outer end. If we were to divide the petal into start and end, some petals are bulbous towards the start, some are bulbous towards the center, and some are bulbous towards the end. These are a few things that you can easily figure out. It's not as if you need to know uh, very advanced botany. You can just look at the petal and see what seems to be the structure of the flower, more or less. Remember, we are still making these as graphic flowers. So even if you don't get it 100% accurate, it's not going to really matter. But there's something about the beauty of flowers, it's in the proportion. So even if you're going to make it graphic, you can still try to figure out its proportion. And then an uneven serrated edge. So I prefer to make all the petals first and then finish the ends of, especially if it has ends like these and not just a round end, because that way then I can be assured that the orientation of all my petals and their sizes are all accurate. And in this, I can now add some texture by adding lines. So I first start off with a line in the center, then I keep dividing the space on either side of this line further and further by adding smaller and smaller lines. And again, smaller lines in between this. So I get that feel of a dense center and a rounded petal, even without having to draw or color anything. So center line, divide that space between this line further, and then draw the smaller line. Just make sure you don't make all the lines the same length. So some will be long, the ones in the center. Then each successive division will be shorter and shorter lines. And then when you come to the center, even then, some lines will be big, tall, some lines will be short, just to keep it interesting. Otherwise, it will look like a patch. I think this is a cosmos. How's it going? All okay? One second. Okay. Janita, why is your flower flattened so much? How did you
I
manage this?
felt that it's gone a bit flat.
Did you see this happen, or was the flower
At the
far
end, I
away from
realized.
you?
In the
Okay.
end, I realized it's flattened. What do you think is the
So
reason?
this can sometimes happen if you keep your work too far away from you.
It was pretty close. I've kept a table and I'm working on that. So it's very close to me.
So I don't know how this happens. I'll tell you when it has happened to me.
Mm.
So sometimes when you're working, and if your book shifts to one side or another, or say I'm drawing on the top of the page, like I've drawn over here, but I'm sitting in the back, there will be a certain foreshortening of my vision. So from where I'm sitting, I feel I'm drawing a perfect circle. The moment I go up, I notice that I probably made it very long. So the same thing happens when you're working sideways also, that if you're doing this sometimes, that you think it is circular, but then when you look at it, it becomes too flat. Another thing might be happening is, wait, first I should show you that my picture also, my circles are often also not fully circular. Right now, this looks circular, but if I turn it this way, it looks narrow. Can you see it? So obviously, my petals are also longer towards the side. So the way we see shapes is very different. So I have a feeling you might have drawn these to proportion, and these, the way you are looking at it, seems like what you have drawn seems like a proper circle until you finished everything, and then you realize that it became too narrow. But now you know how to change it. It will look different in the next one. So the next one, I'm not going to do it right now in class. I'm going to leave it for you to do, and then you can figure out how to create this. This should be fairly easy. There's just four rungs of the same petal, gradually increasing in size, and has been all the petals have been kept at an oblique angle from each other. This should be easy to do, yeah? Okay, so now we'll move to the more complicated flowers. Anju, you had held up your book earlier. Can I have a look? Ah, very nice, wonderful. Do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, now let's tackle this tulip. So a flower like this can be used for like it almost looks like a flourish in as a painting because it's got color, it's got contrast, it's got that frilly edge. So it is going to there are certain things that it evokes. It looks delicate, it looks exotic, exquisite, rare even, because we don't get to see. For us, tulips are also very difficult to come by. And these kind of tulips anyway are rarer to see. So whenever you see pictures of flowers like these, or even this one, we need to see how the interplay between color, the different shapes, say the outline of the petals, the interplay between the colors and the contrast, the shadows, the light, how this falls and what is looking attractive to us. In this particular bud, the focus of the light is so beautiful on the center and then slowly recedes towards the outside. It may have been artificially lit also in this manner, it could have been retouched, but that is not our concern. The drama between the smooth texture of the bud itself and then how the flower is emerging out of it. And then, two, it's not just one, there's multiples in different sizes and colors, starting with a nice light green towards the foreground, going into a very interesting blue towards the background or the midground. The interplay of green versus this almost purple onion color and the blue, all of this looks quite intriguing. So when we are painting, we need to decide on what we want to focus on. If the color is attractive, then we make color the focus and downplay the texture. If the texture is important, like in this case, the lines on the petals, then that is something that we also bring up. We may not do this entire texture, but we try to bring attention to that also. And sometimes it is just the play of color here. So it's only colors, light orange color towards the outside, and then a beautiful rose pink color towards the center of the petal. So we are going to only paint this, and then with a deeper color, I'm going to show you how to create all the depth, the I guess the shadows, but it's not going to probably happen in one shot. So it's going to take a lot of patience. The first step, of course, is accurate drawing. Like we practiced in the first class, the pencil sketch. In this too, that kind of drawing skill would come in handy. So use a 2B pencil or a graphite pencil for this drawing, because we want much of the graphite to come off easily. You don't want to use a hard pencil or an HB pencil or an H pencil thinking that you're going to make a very light line. When you draw with an HB or H pencil, the lead is so hard that you'll end up making grooves in the paper. So better than that, use a darker pencil which has where the graphite is so loose that it can even come off with your hand. Make a quick picture with as few lines as possible. So even if we do a rough sketch, so just observe for 5 minutes. Suppose I want to do a rough sketch like that. This is only to give me an idea of the space consumed. I'm avoiding making the lines too busy. I am just giving myself a few lines to demarcate space. So this This is like what I would say the difference between making a fence and making a wall along your fence. A fence is often just one post after another to indicate a line. A wall would be a whole wall of these fence posts. That is equivalent to this dark line. But when we want the colors to shine, we want to just make these posts next to each other to indicate where the line might be. Once you have this in place, you do have to make an accurate drawing, but you will not make too many errors. This time you keep your eraser handy and as far as possible, erase very little. Use a soft eraser like that and don't go over and over like that. Use the eraser, even if you have a hard eraser, just dab the lines out. Now I'm going to draw the edge of the flower in a very, very wobbly line. We need the shape of the petal. There's a spine to this petal, so you indicate that. The petal becomes fairly flat towards the bottom and rounds off near the spine. And then from behind the spine,
shape coming up. So just pay attention to the relative sizes of these items. Another thing to stay away from for a drawing like this are clutch pencils. So if you're in the habit of using this mechanical pencil for drawing, either use a very soft lead or just avoid it completely. These regular drawing pencils are much better than mechanical pencils because we need a very soft line. Unlike the earlier flowers, you'll notice that this flower has practically no distinguishing lines or even petals. So whatever few overlaps and ribbon-like folds you see, try to draw those since there's such few. Once you're happy with your drawing, reduce the pencil lines. Wherever you have extra pencil lines, you can get rid of them. Now I want to show you two techniques in the same flower. One will require making an underpainting in a deeper blue shade, and the other one will require making shadows after you have made a base coat of the light colors in the flower. So I just want you to observe this. In the petal on the left, I'm first making a few shapes in cobalt blue. Now, I'm not going to necessarily stick to the exact colors of the flower. I'm creating something that will resemble the colors of the flower, because in my limited palette, I may not be able to get the exact shade. But I have to get the drama. So I have made just so much paint. I want you to see how little paint is used. And I'm using a 4-number brush. So just observe what is happening. The consistency of the paint is such that I just get a very light blue color on the paper. This itself will also become lighter in a bit as it dries. So in the few places where I see shadows, I'm going to start adding these shadows. I just want you to observe this. You don't have to paint it right now. I'll give you time afterwards. And I'm making this base color when I can see everything clearly. When I press the brush down, I'm able to change the application of the color. In one edge, I will see a darker shade, and where the brush is pressed, because it is being pressed, it will become lighter. There's a little bit of paint here as well. So I'm going to put a little extra paint in the dark section, wipe my brush, and with the damp brush, just pull the color down. So I'm creating the illusion of a hollow. Same technique I will use to paint this section as well. So the paint is light enough to not even be noticed. Now, once this dries, I will get back into it with a deeper color. The color that I'm going to use now for the right side, for the whole flower. Do you want to give this a shot so I can wait for you while my blue color dries, and then I will show you painting of the whole flower. Now the second part is the remaining colors of the petal, and we're just going to overlay on top of this. So for this, I'm using a color, I'm going to use orange, a little bit of scarlet, and a little bit of crimson. And we're going to allow these colors to merge to give us the petal shape. We can also add a little bit of gamboge if you like. So I want you to see how I'm doing this. You can take a little bit of the paint in your palette, gamboge, orange. Let me just wipe this away. The combination of orange with scarlet and orange with the crimson is quite interesting. So whenever you're mixing colors, don't mix into one puddle. Keep all colors available for you to pick up. So I'm using a not so liquid wash consistency. And I am going to carefully apply, stain the paper with these colors and progressively keep moving forward. Now the trick here, I want you to observe, don't start painting first. I want you to observe how you do not linger too long in this. You need to necessarily move forward fast so that you don't dislodge the blue. Because it's not like watercolor, oils. The earlier color will be dislodged. So you keep moving forward and keep adding. And in this also, if you feel there are some places you want to put a highlight, leave those sections blank. And as you keep moving, you keep adding the next color. Okay, I have a few patches here. So I'm just going to let this be and come back to this afterwards in a second layer. Now, since we have these colors ready, we use the same colors for this petal on the right. And here it's a lot easier. I'm using a little bit of gamboge, then a gamboge on the tips in a few places like that. So I'm pressing the brush down, but keeping the internal edge active. And then I'm going to pull this inward. Load the brush with more crimson and scarlet. And paint it such that it can sit flat. Here we don't need to put any additional texture in the beginning. And we'll just let this dry. Now I can do a second layer on the first petal on the left and repeat the same process. This will deepen the colors and also soften all those weird shapes that I inadvertently made, completely unintentional. And you can use a warm but lighter shade like an orange for this whole application. And now, because the highlight over here is not as white as the highlight that I've landed up making, the second layer I will pull a line over it so that it softens it a little bit. Now in the second petal, you'll notice the colors have mixed in some form or another. You might also feel that they have some clouds. Some of these clouds will be good because they will give us some texture. Some you wish you hadn't done, but it doesn't matter at this stage because we're going to go over the texture very gently and make more shapes there. So before we do that, I want to color the backdrop petal. There's a little tiny petal over here in just a crimson color. It's not a petal, it's just the part of the back of the petal. Now I'm using a very light color, but it's very thick also. This is the consistency of my crimson. And I'm going to use this now to actually draw, almost as if we are working with color pencils, to very gently make these shaded lines onto the petal. So this is where the detailing comes in. And you'll notice that you are able to do a lot of detailing with very little paint. You don't need to keep replenishing color. So in the beginning, you'll be unsure about how much paint to use. So try one technique like this. Fill up a dry paint in your brush, make a line, see how dry you're getting it, and then remove a little bit on your rag. And then in one of the darkest areas, make a line and see how that looks. Remove some more and more. See, there's still so much. So we need just a trace of the color. Even this will look dark. But each line is made looking at the reference image. Please do not imagine anything and don't repeat the same line throughout. So this is how dry my brush is. So this is an extreme dry. Here's how I take my paint. I have very little paint on the side here. I'll take that, I'll wipe off excess, and then again go back into the dark sections. And once I'm comfortable with the shade that's coming out, then I will move it into the main body. So almost realistic looking illustrations are made with these kinds of stroke, this kind of stroke. And if you have the patience for it, it can give you amazing results. Now, as you keep increasing, even in this, eventually, when we want to deepen the shade, we can use the same cobalt blue again, but in the same manner. Again, test the color. Now I'm testing it over here so that I can show you this, but I would obviously never test it on the same page. The blue does not remain blue once it comes into contact with yellow or red, but it gives a much deeper shadow than any amount of red or crimson can give you a picture. And you need that shadow. So the same effect that we create on here on the left by making these shadows at the base, you can create by making these shadows from top. This is fine when you don't have too much of texture and design on the flower itself. But if you do, then this technique works better. Every successive layer that you need to darken, you can keep adding a shade of blue or burnt umber. So you keep adding that to the existing color and build up the shadows. Your brush action now must also be very smooth and confident. The tip of your brush must be very sharp so that you don't land up making fat strokes here. Are you getting that subtle shadow and highlight bit?
I'm gonna have to scrap this and start again. I think I made a hash of it.
Can I have a look at it?
Yeah.
Okay. Huh. Okay, so no, 1 minute. Can I just hold it again?
Yeah.
Okay, a
No, I
little
just went
longer.
over it and over it and it just made it into a.
Okay, but let this dry. So
Uh,
you are on the right track. It's just probably the timing of the layering.
right.
To probably wait a little more. Also, reduce the amount of liquid in your brush when you are doing the layering. It's
Mm.
very crucial so that this is such a delicate operation that even a little extra water means that the underlayer is going to be dislodged. So this will
Has to
take
be
time.
almost dry, very little paint, very sharp,
Yes.
and very little water on the surface.
Yeah, it's almost like miniature painting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I said I wanted to show this to you for you to know that these are the future possibilities. Janita, let me just pin yours. So I think there's similar problems. Everyone's got similar problems. It's also the depth of color that you've used immediately. The first layer might be a little deeper than necessary. Okay, we still have time. Do you want to attempt another flower?
Yes,
Or,
the one,
huh?
the purple one. And it's a lily.
Yeah, I don't mind. That's a
Yeah,
very,
with paint.
okay. This one, right? Yeah, this is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, we can try this. Okay, let's go ahead. I'm leaving this page. It's pretty full right now, so I'll make another page. Don't make the flower too big also. Just make it about this large. Okay. So for this flower, I can show you an even more interesting technique. The colors in the background and the colors in the foreground are pretty similar, right? So we can do an interesting overlay of this one. And if you want, you could make a frame with the paper tape, or you could just keep it like a nice amorphous shape around the flower. So whenever you have things like these, the textured lines and all, avoid making that texture at this stage of drawing. You can always first put a wash, and then after the first wash is done, if you need to draw more stuff, you can draw at that time, and then make the second painting. At the third layer, if you want, you can draw separate things. That's how you can plan and make your illustration without too many pencil lines visible. So for this fellow, I'm going to use a wash of green, a little bit of ultramarine blue, and I'm going to let some of that wash spread outward. Here I'm using crimson and ultramarine blue to create that beautiful purple color. And I'm not going to paint the whole thing. I'm going to leave a few sections unpainted, more than the highlight sections. Green is just going to be a direct sap green, although sometimes you can attempt using just a lemon yellow along with ultramarine blue. That might keep the color scheme in just the same wheelhouse. So they don't look like two different greens. The bright green of sap might be a little too bright on the outside. Okay, so in planning, first thing, keep multiple brushes handy. You might want to switch from one brush to another brush. It does not always, you don't need to do all the painting with one brush. So I'm taking one brush to put down a little bit of direct lemon yellow in a few places. And I'm going to help some of this color run into other shades. The main brush has got the new green color. All the shades that I want to paint are ready on my palette. Because this is going to be a wash, the colors can be very light and watery. So I'm very lightly putting a little bit of green here and there. And then I'm going to put my cobalt blue in a few sections. It's too dark. This place has a nice silhouette, so I'm not going to go close to that cobalt. I'm leaving that section white. And even in this, I'm going to add a little bit of the purple color so that it bleeds outward. So base colors are not necessarily the final color. This one I'm going to just merge it. So as far as possible, avoid going over and over the same area. But you can take the paint and spread it around that area. So I'm going to do this along the edge. But now at this stage, maybe I won't want to add any more. And I'll just leave it like that. Allow the colors to do whatever they want to do. I know this looks really muddy right now, but trust me, this will look nice later. So at this point, I want to insert a little bit of purple in one section here because I want it to blend. And the same purple I will add, but not so close to the edge because I don't want it to go out. These wet on wet textures, one on top of the other, at the right time can make all the difference in how realistic your illustrations look. But in time, of course, you can plan for these. But in the beginning, look for these opportunities. You have to constantly keep evaluating. Can I put my color here? Can I put it now? Is it too wet? Is it too dry? And just give it a shot. Wing it and see what happens. So you want a few shapes like these, a few clouds like these to appear. This is what I mean by a combination of the light, watery unpredictability of watercolor and yet the refined, sharp-edged painting, almost like an oil painting of a realistic artwork. Okay, now this is dried, so or drying. So right here I can go about making the kind of filler that I had done for the pink flower. Just gently keep adding on. Of course, I'm jumping the gun here just to save time. But ideally, I would wait for this whole thing to dry before going into it with the detailing. So this part, the part where I am using the brush, this is also a very important part of the painting technique. It's not just about what colors to use and getting the right consistency. uh, it is about having a very light hand. And for this, funnily enough, the pencil sketching practice will help you. So like when, I'm sure you must have seen people do calisthenics, they have really, really strong abdominal muscles. This requires very strong metaphoric abdominal muscles of your fingers. You should know exactly how your brush is making contact with paper. This part is slightly dry. I will be working on this later. So I will make a video of the progress. Now, if you look at the reference image and look at this image, you'll see how the green color that has seeped in quite by chance is the exact shade of color that I need underneath all those stripes in the neck of the bud. So although I knew that there was some green over there, it is definitely not, I wasn't expecting it to be so exact, so precise. Now I'll just keep building these lines and create the texture that we want. And some places where you see dots, those dots will be represented by this, the way that the ultramarine blue pigment has just settled in this space. All right, any questions? Do you think you will be able to try this one later? Okay, let's see Anju's. Okay, heading in the right direction. Has the water come down to the base of the paper? Okay, then wait, then don't pick it up. Okay. Neeta, how are you doing? Wait, I can't hear you.
Still pretty, it's become very watery and very.
Huh. Okay, so when the paint is very watery, wait till the earlier layer dries and then put paint over.
Oh,
So
okay.
too much water in paint just means that your colors are going to run all over. That is what it is. That is what the medium does. So if you do have too much water, you should know that if it does not get space to run, it is going to create a pattern or a texture or a cloud. So it's
Okay.
not wrong, but you know what to expect. Now, if there is too much water and you want to remove it,
Okay.
use a nice fat brush and wet it first and then wipe it completely dry and then hold it on that excess water and lift up as much as you can. As you keep lifting, the brush keeps filling up, so you have to keep wiping it and then keep doing that exercise and just run the tip very close along the edge, not right in the center, along the edge from where you can pick up the water, and some pigment also is going to come away. That will reduce the amount of water and everything will settle. Once it settles, you can go back into this after all the color has dried.
Right.
Try to do it too early. That means you are activating the paper when it is most vulnerable, not activating, aggravating, agitating. So then that will release fiber.
Yeah. Yeah.
The trick is to not panic, most important. This is when whatever is happening on paper, suppose you put in too much water and too much pigment and everything is very dark. Then you feel that while it is wet, let me quickly blend something. That is
Yeah.
thing you could do. So this is not how I don't know what works like that. Maybe cooking works like that. That while it is hot, maybe I can still do it. Once it becomes cold, nothing will happen. I don't know. But in painting, panicking does not work. Don't dab with your rag if something is too wet. our paper does not support it. It's not wrong, but a 300 GSM paper can support a rag being dabbed to pick up excess liquid, but not our paper. So remember that all colors will dry about 30% lighter than when you paint them. So no matter how much you panic, it's like, I'm sure you all have a relative like that in the family. A tiny thing has happened, but they will blow it out of proportion and just make everything so urgent and such a big mountain out of a molehill. That is what we have to avoid, because everything can be corrected, everything can be modified. Now, in the event that your color spreads more than necessary, every successive layer, you can create more shadows and deeper colors to reinforce the exact outline of your flower. In the case of this flower, say I paint something and one color goes out, it won't really look too bad. The next layers, when I have more controlled strokes, I can bring all the shadows in, and whatever extra paint is on the outside will in fact look like maybe an out of focus petal or something that is in the background that will support the illustration. Other than in portraiture, I haven't come across any stray color being a hindrance to the overall outcome of your painting. So just let it be. We'll tackle this when everything has settled. Okay, so I foresee when you are trying this technique, you will have the problem of figuring out how much medium to use in your brush. When you become comfortable, you'll be able to do this technique even with a 10 number brush, because you will know exactly what the consistency of the paint is in the brush. So in the beginning, when you're making the detailed strokes, try to stay to number 4 brushes and below. So once in a while, go to a 0 number brush also. It's a very painful process working with 0 number brush, because that is how miniature painting artists work. They work with 000 and quadruple 0 and all. Like 3 hairs of a squirrel's tail will be one brush. But that's how they achieve that really fine grading of color. So try it. Once you are comfortable with the consistency, once you're familiar with the consistency, you can achieve that in even higher numbered brushes. The second thing is that there is more than one stroke that you can do in brushes. Sometimes just a sweep of the brush will give you one stroke where at the tip of the brush you have a dark color, and at the middle of the brush you just have a sweep of light color. That is something I'm going to encourage you to try. In the beginning, you might just get one fat splotch of color. Let that be. Make another one with lesser paint. That's another thing that you will get. Once in a while, when you load the brush and start doing this fine painting, you will get some dark patches. Resist the temptation to lighten it or remove it or blend it. Let it be, let it go, move on to the next one. Just imagine that that is part of the texture of the flower. All right, and don't panic.
Thank
Okay. All right. So today is the 23rd. We still have one more class next week, I think. That might be an extra class for us, right? Did we have all classes? We've done 4 things in this month. Yeah. So let me know if there's something specific that you'd like to do, or we can do some of the earlier stuff. We can continue this stuff if you want, or we can make a project.
Leaves, I wanted some help, like the veins and all. No, it's coming very horrible.
All right, let's do leaves in the next class.
Like this, I won't know how to improve. I want that transparent, and those veins should look realistic. This looks very shabby.
I'll do leaves next week. Okay, great. Super.
So
Sure.
Aditi, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, you have added us to another group called the Doodle Factory
Community.
community.
Yeah.
So is it different from Art from Home group?
So this is, I'm just trying this out. I'm glad you asked. The community keeps all the groups together for me, I think, and then
Okay.
I can share information or notices on all communities at the same time. But you are not required to then, you don't need to add yourself to any other community as of now. But I'm gonna give this a month and see if there's any advantage or it just creates more confusion. And then we can just, I'll just dissolve it otherwise. Because sometimes Instagram or all these apps introduce a new feature which is going to replace a previous feature, like broadcast groups. And then if we have a broadcast group or we have a large group and we've not made a community out of it, they might just do something with the groups because they want to make the groups part redundant. You never know. So I just want to be on top of things. That's why I have put this all together. But if there's any problem with this, please let me know because I will see it as an admin from one end. You will face the consequences of my making you a group.
Okay.
Okay.
So we still need to be with Art for Home and
Yeah. That you continue. Nothing changes for you.
okay, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall I see you next
you.
week? Bye.
Bye.